Hi everyone, welcome to the last part of my Paul McCartney album ranking videos. Hopefully plenty of you have seen what I've done already, where I've counted down from number 26 to number 6 in my album rankings, and this time we are going to do the top 5. So let's crack on straight away with number 5. I've got Venus and Mars. Great album from Paul and Wings. This was the follow-up to Band on the Run, and you could say that this was the first album that they made after they'd become a huge band. So they'd been sort of working their way through from starting up as a unit and getting more confident. Band on the Run just went massive, and then this was the first album that they made after they became massive. There's a lot of confidence and sort of swagger to this album, and it really comes across in the music. It's a great confident opening with Venus and Mars and Rock Show. Listen to what the man said. Fantastic song, just so much energy and joy in that song. Absolutely brilliant. I really like You Gave Me the Answer as well. It's very much back to Paul's music hall tradition. When I'm 64, Honey Pie, especially Honey Pie, that kind of song that Paul does really well, and who else throughout the last 50 years has made, as well as rock songs, has been doing songs like that? I can't think of anybody. Magneto and Titanium Man is just great fun from start to finish. It's a comic book adventure in a rock song, brilliant. And Call Me Back Again, that reminds me a lot of Oh Darling on Abbey Road. It's that kind of thing where it's really going for it on the vocal. Similar kind of song, and really good energy to it. Very bizarre end to this album, I must say, with Crossroads, and I'm sure most people know this. Certainly certain people of a certain age who are from the UK will certainly know. If you're not sure, Crossroads was it's actually the theme tune to an old soap opera that was on in Britain back in the sort of 60s through to the 90s, and Crossroads did occasionally use Paul's version of the song when they'd had sort of big important episodes with deaths or weddings or such like. They rolled out Paul's version now and again, but very, very weird way to end an album, but there you go. It's a cracking album, typical mid-70s stadium rock kind of thing, but really good. That's my number 5. Number 4, I did struggle a bit I couldn't decide for a while whether to have 4 and 5 switched around, but eventually I've gone with this as number 4. His debut album, self-titled, McCartney, from 1970. So the album that was recorded privately, mainly at home, a little bit at Abbey Road, whilst he was technically still a Beatle. So this is sort of unique amongst his catalogue in that it's Beatle Paul making this album, even though he'd sort of finished his Beatle duties by that point. It's such a great album to listen to, even though a lot of the songs aren't finished. They're just sort of little fragments of songs. It's very lo-fi because he just wheeled in a recording studio, a recording deck into his house and recorded it himself. But it's just, you really get inside his head in this. He's admitted a lot more lately about how it was a difficult period for him with the breakup of the Beatles. And this is almost like, it's like therapy, is this album. Something like Every Night, where you hear him talking about every night I just want to go out, get out of my head. He's telling you things about himself that he'd never really told us before in song. Ooh, You and Mama Miss America. I like that beginning of side 2. I really like that sort of bluesiness of that, something that we often don't get from Paul. That's really nice. And of course, one standout song on here that shines above everything else is Maybe I'm Amazed. And my personal belief, and has been for many years, is that Maybe I'm Amazed is the best song recording he has ever done in his career, and I'm including the Beatles in that. It is Paul McCartney. He wrote it, he's playing everything on it, he's singing about his favourite topic, Linda. It's just absolutely stunning start to finish, and I'm putting my neck on the line I'm saying that is the greatest song he's ever recorded. My opinion, folks. There you go. And I love Karina Craw at the end as well. You crank that up loud, and all right, he's not the greatest drummer in the world, but it's all about the feel of it, the passion of it, and that close-up mic on his breath that you get sort of maybe just after halfway through, where you can just hear him. You can hear him really sort of going for it, and fantastic. So it's a great album to listen to. It was a very interesting start to his solo career, and that's my number 4. Okay, number 3. I've got Flaming Pie. Please re-release this on vinyl, Paul, please. I'll show you the CD for now. I'll just get a quick look at the track listing while we're here, just if anybody wants a little reminder. Okay. So Flaming Pie, this was the last album that he made whilst Linda was still alive. And I think the big thing with this album that probably has helped it to be so good in terms of the songwriting, mainly because it's the songwriting that shines through on this, is, so this was recorded around about the mid-90s, or the sort of just into the second half of the 90s, and Paul had obviously spent a long time being really heavily involved in the Beatles anthology project, and I just get the impression that he must have been re-listening to the Beatles work, listening to the stuff that he was doing 30 years earlier, reminding himself about the quality that he used to have in his work, and whether that's made him sort of take note and think, actually, can I still do something at that level? Maybe it has. But some of the songs on here, I'm just going to call a few of them out. Some Days, Calico Skies, Little Willow, those songs would sit very, very comfortably on Revolver, the White Album, etc., and they're absolutely of that quality. There's no let off in quality at all there. It's not a perfect album. I think Really Love You isn't as good as the rest of it. Used to Be Bad's okay, but again, it's probably not up to the quality of the rest of the album. I love the song we were singing, the opening song on here. Just sort of him sort of reminiscing, having a little drink, a little smoke, and talking about the old days. That's a really great opening to the song, and some good just normal pop songs on here as well. The World Tonight, If You Wanna, the title track Flaming Pie, they're all just good. Young Boy, of course, as well. Just good pop songs mixed with some absolute classics. Calico Skies is just superb, and fantastic live version that he did for several years afterwards as well of that song, in a bit of a different style. But I think that was a real return to form, and I think it's sort of the start of this sort of last chapter of his career, which hopefully it's got a long way to run yet, but it's certainly kicked off what's been a really quality 20-year run for Paul, largely, with not many blips in between. So that's my number 3 album anyway, Flaming Pie. Fantastic. So we're down to the final 2. Anybody who's been watching these videos right from the start, I'm sure there's some of you out there, hopefully, will probably have guessed which 2 albums it is that I have got left to talk about. So which one's going to come in at number 2? I've gone with Band on the Run. So this was, of course, the album that it just exploded in the early 70s, an absolutely massive album, and it really put Paul on the map as a solo artist. So it had obviously several albums before, and the critics hadn't raved about any of them. Some of them hadn't sold as well as he might have hoped they had done. But Band on the Run came along, and sometimes an album comes along of such quality that you cannot ignore it, and this is one of them. I think that the opening 3 songs on here, Band on the Run, Jet and Bluebird, I think that stands up there with almost any album in history in terms of the quality 3-song opening. There's some that you could put on a level with it. There might be the odd one or two that you could argue is better, but that as an opening 3 songs is absolutely phenomenal. And there's great quality throughout. Mrs. Vanderbilt, great. Let Me Roll It. I mean, it's a song that he's still doing live now. That great riff that very sneakily similar to the Cold Turkey guitar riff. Obviously, there was a lot of backwards and forwards between John and Paul in those days. And let me roll it back to you, John, with one of your guitar riffs. He could be saying there. Mamounia, not the strongest song on the album, but it certainly adds to the sort of African feel of the album, with, of course, with it being recorded in Nigeria. Lots of great stories about, and some not so great stories about what happened while they were over in Nigeria making it. So there's a great story around this album as well. And No Words is an interesting one for me, because until quite recently I didn't really like No Words as a song, but I couldn't figure out why at all, and I think I've figured it out now, and now I understand. I like the song a lot. To me, it sounds like it's on the wrong album. I think if it was on the album before, Red Rose Speedway, I think it would fit a lot better on that album. It just seems to me a little bit out of place here. And if I think of it as a Red Rose Speedway song, I think it's a great song. It's a shame it ended so quickly. It just seems to get going with that guitar solo, and then they fade it out again, gone. But yeah, I've started to like No Words a lot more recently. And let's of course mention the end of the album, 1985. Wow, what a song that is. What a fantastic closing song to an album. Is it the best song to end a Paul McCartney album? That's an interesting question, for me anyway. If you can think of a better one, let me know. I'm not sure. I must admit that I've never been keen on the way at the end of that song it fades out and the Band on the Run chorus comes back in. I think I could have done without that. I don't think that particularly helps the song. I think it's a classic Paul tactic of easing the tension, because it's an intense ending to that song. And throughout his career, there's a lot of examples of him easing the tension on songs when it seems to be getting a bit heavy. And I think that's one of them, and I don't think it particularly works. But fantastic album. Band on the Run is my number 2. Well, here we are finally at the end. My number 1 favourite Paul McCartney album is Ram. Just a wonderful album. It's one that just, for me, gets better and better with time. I loved it in the early 90s when I first heard it, and I love it even more now. There's just so much good stuff on this album worth calling out. Dear Boy, for example, that to me, it's like Paul doing his best Brian Wilson arrangement. Brian Wilson would be proud of that arrangement. Listen to it carefully. I've heard some people say that Dear Boy is rubbish. What? I cannot get my head around that at all. There's so much going on in that song in terms of the arrangement and the production, and how that all comes together is just absolute genius. I think that is a fair word. I think Dear Boy shows the genius that this guy had. And I think after his first album, McCartney, which was, we've talked about, was very much a sort of a homegrown fragments. This is him just sort of stepping out, small feet, stepping out from the Beatles' shadow. This is him strapping on his Doc Martens and kicking the door down and saying, I'm here, I'm Paul McCartney, and this is what I'm capable of. Heart of the Country, fantastic little song, would absolutely sit on the White Album. And actually something I noticed recently, if you take the Paul McCartney songs from the White Album and just listen to those in isolation, it's almost like a prototype Ram. It gives you a sort of good clue as to the direction that he was heading in. Monkberry Moon Delight, awesome. How much fun can you have in one song? Just sensational, the way that song just hits you right from the start and just never lets go. Absolute nonsense lyrics, but brilliant at the same time. Love that song. Eat at Home, Long Haired Lady, they're both great. It's probably not the strongest section of the album, but still great. If you'd have had songs of those quality, as if they are lesser tracks, that's open to debate, but if they're the lesser tracks on the album, if other albums had lesser tracks of that quality, then they would be superb albums. And then towards the back end, you've got the reprise of Ram On, which is interesting because there's a lyric in there that ties in with the start of Big Barn Bed on Red Rose Speedway. If that's not a connection you've heard before, go and listen to Ram On, and then go and listen to the start of him singing on Red Rose Speedway on Big Barn Bed, and you'll see the link there. And then finishing with Backseat of My Car, another great song, and another one that you could almost say Brian Wilson could have written that when he was at his peak. Beautiful song, the way it builds, and it's just, again, a fantastic closer to the album. So I know this album got savaged when it came out by the critics, by the other Beatles as well. They said some pretty nasty things about this album. But you know what? I think they've all been proved wrong. Time has been very, very kind to this album. It's superb. I'm very happy to have this as my #1 Paul McCartney album. And that's it. This has been, how many videos? Five videos now to get to this point. Some of you will have watched all of it, and thank you very much for doing that. If you've just seen this one now, if you want to go back and check out the others, that would be much appreciated. I'm going to move on with my life now and think of some other videos to do other than Paul McCartney album ranking videos. If you want to see what those are, it'd be lovely if you could subscribe to my channel or like this. It just helps, gives me a bit of confidence that these things are worth doing. But thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed that. If you want to have any comments down below about this video, let's have a chat about it. Anything that would you have had a different #1, different things in your top 5? Let's hear from you. But thank you for watching anyway. See you later. Bye.